Hello students. Well, in our previous sessions we saw about controlling, how it helps of an organization. We also saw the limitations of controlling and the drawbacks that are being faced by the companies because of the controlling, and the problems that the companies need to overcome for installing a control mechanism. We also saw the connection between planning and controlling and how the two processes are interconnected, how they have to work side by side. So we know the importance of controlling now. So after that we stepped into the controlling process, the step by step of how a controlling need to be done in any organization. So to recap, controlling means influencing the action of a particular individual or an event. So if you have the ability to influence the actions of a person, say your subordinate, the employees, laborers, so on and so forth, or the happening or not happening of a particular event, it's called controlling in the business. So controlling needs to be done to make sure that everything, every action that is happening in the company has been happening as per the plans. So first of all, we need a plan to install a controlling system in an organization. So our controlling happens based on the plans that has been made by the organization. So we will see the step-by-step process of controlling. So in the last session we saw setting up of performance standards, the two types, quantitative and qualitative, and then we saw the measurement of actual performance. So the first step in controlling is to set up the performance standards. So according to the plan, let us say that the plan, in a company, in an organization has an yearly plan to manufacture 10,000 units of a product. So that is a plan according to which controlling needs to be done. So the first step is setting up of standards. So those standards means that if you need to manufacture the 10,000 products, 10,000 units in a year, you need to manufacture at least 900 units per month to have to be able to complete the given task in time, and also to have some more time to make sure if there is any defects, we will need to cover it up. So that kind of uh, target is called standard. So second thing is, after setting a standard, we need to measure the actual performance, and how the performance is being done, how whether the performance is done to the expected level. So we measure, so according to our short-term plan, any organization, I mean our organization has to manufacture 900 units in a month. So we measure the number of units that is being manufactured, whether it is up to the expected level, whether it is 900 or is it below, and how much the employees have been working, and whether they have been utilizing the resources to the fullest potential, whether there had been any drawbacks, whether there had been any setbacks in the working, is there any incompetencies arising in the working process, so on and so forth. We, the controlling authority measures all of these things. So there are various things and various people that are need to be measured, whose work needs to be measured. One of them are employees. So one of the ways to measure the performance of employees is performance report. The performance report is generally being submitted by the HR. It says that whether the employee have been working to his or her fullest potential, his or her, if him or her is completing the given tasks, so on and so forth. If that is up to the standard level, it will be reflected on the performance report. So if it is not, the HR department will notify you regarding the drawbacks in the report. So that is how you measure the performance of employees. And measuring the performance of company means we have the profit and loss ratios, we have the gross profit, net profit ratio, we have other ratios related to capital and interests. so on. So we use those gross profit net profit ratio to measure the performance, overall performance of a company, whether it is up to the expected level or how much of profit is being earned for the particular amount of capital that has been invested in the firm. So that and all we will know by measuring the performance of company. So measurement of performance of department is in the units concerned, like I have expressed in the previous session. And so is random quality check. Random quality check is done by some managerial person to check the quality of the products that is being manufactured. So these are some of the ways to measure performance. Next up is comparison of actual performance with standards. So we all know that we have set up standards. That was the first step. So to set up standards is that to decide that the company had to manufacture 900 units per month. So that is the standard. And actual performance is seeing how much the company has actually performed. It could be 800, it could be 850, it could be 950 also. So it could be underperforming or overperforming. Overperforming means we will be able to increase the standards. We will be in for the next month we could be able to increase our standard from 900 to 950. So if in the first month, say January, the employees were able to manufacture 100 900 unit 950 units, but our actual standard is only 900 units, the company can choose to increase its standard from 900 to 950. Or in other way, if the opposite way, if the standard is 900 but the actual performance is only 850 units, then we need to find out why that standard has, I mean why the employees haven't been able to achieve the set standard. So that difference between the standard and the actual performance is called deviation. So how much the performance has been deviated from the actual plan or the actual standard or the desired result. So the desired result is 900 units for the month of January, but the actual performance is only 850 units means, so there is a deviation of 50 units. So it is the duty of the controlling authority to find out why that deviation has happened. So to measure, to first of all to know that that deviation has happened, we need to measure the actual performance. After measuring that, we'll know that the deviation has happened and we need to find out why the deviation has happened. So it is easier to do the comparison if the standards are set in quantitative terms. So saying that we need to manufacture 900 units is a quantitative term. So if we roughly say that we need to perform better, means that's not a quantitative term, it's just a vague terminology. So instead of giving a vague terminology to the employees, if we set a quantitative terms saying that we need to manufacture 900 units, that will be easier to, then it will be easier for the employees to plan ahead. So quantity of past performance can be compared with the current performance. So in the past performance, maybe the employees were able to manufacture 850 or so unit, means in this month we can strive to do better than that, so we can manufacture 900 units. That kind of standards can be set by the performance of employees from the last period, last month or so on and so forth. So next step is analyzing deviations. Analyzing deviations is what I have said. After we know that there has been deviations that has taken place, so deviation means the deviation from actual plan to the actual performance. So expected result to the actual performance is called a deviation. So some deviation is expected in all kinds of operations. So the subject says that in any plants, in any operation, some kind of deviation is expected. So no operation is pitch perfect. So it's no point in crying over any performance lagging or over or under performance, and if the actual performance hasn't been achieved, because in any operation there will be some sort of deviation, and one should examine what is the acceptable amount of deviation. So acceptable amount of deviation means to what extent deviation can happen, because if we have set 900 units and the employees have been only able to manufacture 896 units, that's not a big deal. So is 890 or 880, it's just 20 units, and they will be able to do it in a matter of days. So first of all, it is the duty of the controlling authority to find out why the deviation has occurred, and if even if the deviation is small, it is better to just analyze why it happened, but there is no need to take corrective measures for small amount of deviation. That's why we implement something called a critical point control. So critical point control means finding out where the deviations has happened in a large scale. So if it is 890 out of 900 units, it's acceptable, but if it is only 400 out of 900 units, it is not acceptable. So that is a critical point that which needs corrective measures. So the employees have worked less than half of what they are supposed to work, and we have underachieved way too much. So in that scenario, the management has the liability, the management has the responsibility to find out why such a huge deviation has happened, and to take corrective actions, whether the employees were not working properly, or whether there is any uh, default or mistake that happened that has made the company suffer the loss so much, so on and so forth. What will be the reason for such underachievement? That is called corrective measures that is being taken on the key result areas. So key result areas are the ones where we need to focus more on. So in any kind of operations, not only in the production, in HR department or in the sales department, if the sales department has particular target and they have underachieved, means if the underachievement is up to the acceptable amount, or whether it has deviated too much. If it has deviated too much, then it will be called a key result area, and the key result areas need the attention of the management people. So we determine which are all acceptable amount of deviations and which are all key result areas, and the key result areas will be in the key result areas, corrective measures will be taken to make sure that it will not happen again. So there is one little trick in here called management by exception. So the principle is that if you attempt to control everything, you cannot control anything. So like we said before, in any operation, a certain amount of deviation is expected to happen. So it is not useful to worry over small deviations. So we need to find out which are all the deviations that is manageable or acceptable. So and after ignoring that, we will have remaining what are all the unacceptable amount of deviations, the KRAs, the huge deviations that is not supposed to happen. So only on those areas we need to focus. The management needs to focus. The controlling authority needs to focus. So once you identify the key areas, we will take corrective measures. That is the job of the managerial people, and they will find why such deviation has happened, whether it is because of inadequacy of resources, or is it a structural drawback, or because the standards were set too high, or because if there is any defective process, so on and so forth, and they will come to a conclusion that this is why such deviation has happened. So we have been given some advantages of using this critical point control and management by exception. The main thing is it saves time and effort of managers as they deal with only significant deviations. So if you are dealing with all the insignificant or acceptable deviations, yeah, there are plenty of time and energy have been wasted. So instead, the management should focus only on the key areas. Second is it focuses managerial attention on important areas. Thus, there is better utilization of managerial talent. Yes, the managerial talent is only required where there has been huge deviation or underachievement, not in places where the deviation is acceptable. And third point is the routine problems are left to the subordinates. Management by exception thus facilitates delegation of authority and increases morale of employees. So taking corrective measures or becoming strict to the employees because they have underachieved by 20 units will discourage the employees, because it is a very small amount and there is no need to be so strict over just 20 units. So instead of management being directly included in such areas, the management will just give a word to the
subordinates or the uh, delegation that is responsible for that area. So instead of manager directly involving in the operation process, they'll just tell the operation manager to advise the employees not to set a drawback even by 20 units. So that way the manager doesn't have to directly involve, but they will also put a word to the employees that they need to work better. So that way the manager will focus on the key areas, and his talent is not wasted on advising the employees to work harder for the remaining 20 units. So next point is it identifies critical problems where which need a timely action to keep the organization in right track. Yes, so if the management is focusing on the acceptable deviations where there is only small amount of deviation, they will not have enough time to take corrective measures in the place in the areas where it requires the managerial action, such as the key areas. So the key areas are the ones that is in dire need of managerial overseeing supervision. So if the managers are looking at 20 unit under achievement, they will not have enough time to find out why the key areas didn't function properly. So they should utilize their time on the key areas. So taking corrective action is the same thing. If the deviation is within the acceptable limits, there is no corrective action required. So you can appreciate your employees for performing up to the expectation. But if the deviations go beyond the acceptable range, say less than 800 units or less than 700 units out of 900 units, it requires managerial action, so it will not occur in the upcoming month, and it will not set a drawback on the overall yearly plan of the company. So to avoid that from happening, the managerial action is required where the deviation from the original plan is way too much.